Hey, my proppers. Today, I'm going to be talking about making a breastplate for this costume that we're doing, this Captain Moroni. I didn't show you the whole process. I'm not going to show you the whole process because I didn't make this. I guess like the foam shield, it wasn't like my idea. So I'm just going to link to the people who do this. So I used Kamui Cosplay's Adonis armor for the breastplate for this character. She has a page. It was like $12, and you download it. I printed out. You can print out the sheets, or you can take it to Kinko's, FedEx Kinko's, or FedEx Office, or Staples, and they can print it full size for you. On this particular project, Kamui Cosplay, they put those up based off of her measurements. And so I found that I had to scale this up 110, 115%. And you can see that gets it to right about where I am. 110%. So what I want to talk about today is I'm going to do a little painting towards the end here, but I want to talk about something that went bad for me. And I know that isn't always what these videos are for, but I looked and looked for like a definitive tutorial about how to fix your screw up with foam armor making, and this one and this is the best that I found. So I'm going to show you what I screwed up, and I'm going to show you why you don't need to be helpless. So I'm going to show you this first. So I made a mistake in that I've never made foam armor like this before, where I've connected it. And so when I made my foam armor here, I made these pectoral pieces and also the seam here in the abdominal muscle. I got this filler product called Gap Filler from TNT Cosplay. I guess they get it from Prop Monkey Studios. And I thought that I'd have a little bit of leeway to be able to sand things down, use the filler, and then go from there. Well, the first thing I did wrong was not aligning my seams properly. Let me see here. This doesn't look too bad from your perspective. There's a little bit of glue there, but that all disappears when you paint it. But when you're gluing two pieces together, you want them to line up really, really well on the side that you're doing. On this side, it lines up really well now, but it didn't. I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes. Anyway, so I didn't do that. So that was my first mistake that I made. The second mistake I made was really sanding this harsh and then not going from 60 to 100 to 150 to 220 and then wet sand to 3 and to 4 and to 6, and that was a big mistake I made. And because I did that and I just went right to plasti-dip, you can see how fuzzy and rough this finished thing is. Well, after I plasti-dipped this the first time, I spent a long time sanding and wet sanding and trying to get rid of that mistake. It was a big mistake. And yet there's a part of me that's just like, stick to it. You don't need to redo the whole thing. Or you have to redo the whole thing. I don't know. That's one reason I'm putting this video up, is because, I mean, I'm not perfect at any of these things that I do. I have a real bad tendency to like trying new things. And then once I've tried them, I kind of move on to the next one. Kind of like been there, done that. But with this stuff, I think that there's definitely a technique, and people that do it well, I have a lot more respect for foam armor as a result of this process. But so anyway, so what was I saying? So I spent a lot of time trying to fix this. I was worried it was still going to just look like a polished turd. So I had the same problem on this piece. Do you like my tripod here? I had the same problem with this piece. It was just, this is the back piece. And so I'm going to show you up close what it looks like painted. So even though it still looks like kind of hammered dog poop without the paint on it, like, I don't know if you can see this. This was the seam, and it had the same problem. But once you paint it, it doesn't look as bad as I thought it was going to look. Like, this is a commission, and I was really worried that I was going to have to start it over. And even then, that I wasn't going to have the chops to be able to pull it off. So so from here, can you see how much better that looks, even from here? Now, the paint and the weathering kind of covers it up, but I didn't like have to pay any particular attention to the weathering over here to be able to like cover that stuff up. Just the undulations and the way that the light hits it kind of covers it up. So I'm hopeful that when I get this to gold and then to weather, that everything is going to be fine. But I want to spend the rest, rather than showing you how to paint this, I'll show you what this ends up looking like at the end of this tutorial. But rather than showing you how to paint this, I'm going to show you how to make sure that this process goes really well. And so what you're going to need is you're going to need a bunch of grits of sandpaper, and you're going to need Mod Podge, and you're going to need plasti-dip. And then you need to just make sure, first of all, that when you're joining those two pieces, that your seams are as close together as you can make them. Like, no overlay. Because the minute you have to sand that with, you know, with any kind of sandpaper, a 60 grit or an 80 grit or whatever, what you're doing is you're taking off that nice, smooth skin. You're taking off that nice, smooth skin. That when you hit that with just, you heat seal it with the heat gun, and then you shoot it with the plasti-dip, that skin looks amazing. It looks like it was just all one piece. But the minute you have to sand it to make up for a distance like this, that's when you start to get into trouble. So I'm going to show you that process here real quick, and then I'll just show you the difference. I'm going to show you how much work it takes to get this piece looking nice and smooth versus what it looks like if you just do it right the first time. So before you get to put any hodgepodge on this, but after you've put any foam filler or quick seal in here, you have to get this sanded back down right. So you're going to take it to a high grit belt sander, or you're going to do it by hand. You're going to work from an 80 to 100 to 120 to 150 to 180 to 200 to 220, okay? And you're going to get it nice and smooth. You're going to get rid of any part that isn't lined up. You're going to get rid of anything that's proud. And now you're going to have a situation where you've got a lot of, maybe you've got some bumps, maybe you don't by the time you get up to that 220. But you have to sand it. You have to take your time and you have to sand it down. Now what you've done is you've removed that amazing skin that's on here from the manufacturing process of this foam. So we have to get it to that point where we can put that skin back on. I would also recommend doing some wet sanding. So this is 400, and you just get it wet, and you come up here and you work it, and you can work wet sandpaper just like you can work any regular sandpaper. So you start from a 400, you go to a 600, go to 800, go to 1,000, and then you keep moving your way up until you get to that smoothness so that you can restore it. Now, if you look here, now that we're done, that is just as smooth as a new skin. But if you try and put plasti-dip on top of that, it's going to suck that plasti-dip up. So you have to restore that skin now. Now that you have a perfect substrate, you have a perfect seam, you have to restore that skin with hodgepodge or quick seal, or I've seen neoprene painted on. But you have to do something to restore that skin. So that's the next step. Okay, so what I've got here is I've got this Elmer's glue, which is basically the same as Mod Podge. Mod Podge just has a different viscosity to it. I've got this in here and I've got some water. Anyway, so you're going to put your glue in the cup. You're going to put a little bit of water in it so that it gets thin. And then you're just going to brush it on. Now what you're doing here is you're sealing it up and restoring that smooth texture that was on there prior to sanding it off. So let's dry this up real quick. Okay, so you're saying to yourself, Ryan, aren't you just going to go ahead and now put plasti-dip on this? Yes, you are. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to restore, before plasti-dipping, you're trying to restore that smooth finished foam surface so that when you do put the plasti-dip on it, instead of getting this fuzzy bit, you're getting the smooth bit. Now, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this because there's a lot of variation in the surface here, but there's a little bit of pocking that's right here as a result of having to sand. And that's what you want to avoid. Now, I think we're still going to be okay because I think once we put the plasti-dip on this, it's going to be super smooth. So let's go spray that on. Okay, so we're going to show you the two. So this is the one that was just glued together, no filling, no sanding. And then this is the one that had the sanding on it. So do you see the difference? You can kind of see where the skin came off on this one and where it didn't. And you can kind of see that it's a much more difficult kind of joining. So, I mean, I want to get this sanded right and everything so that you can see that they're looking the same after the process. And I mean, these are really close, but by no means is this ever going to be as good as this. Time is the key to making your finished product look more like this than like this. You've seen the difference between those two. And now we're going to put some paint on them, okay? Okay. So now you can see the difference between the two starts to really disappear, okay? So this one is always going to look a lot better because it doesn't have all that goop on it. This one is, looking good. And then even if you take it just a couple of feet out, it still looks okay. So my point in this, again, always just to summarize, is putting that seam, matching that seam is the most important part of this whole process. Obviously, cutting your pattern accurately, letting the weld wood dry or the rubber cement dry is important, but you can kind of, at the beginning of the project, if you cut wrong, you can toss it and cut again. But boy, once you're to this point where you've got it all assembled and glued up, it's really hard to turn around from there. So I'll show you on this piece now that it has just the paint on it. I mean, you can see how much better it looks just, with paint on it. You don't notice the difficulties as much. But boy, it really ruined my day yesterday thinking that I ruined this project. So there you go. I'll show you how this thing looks in another video once it's got all of the leather on it and the attachments and all. But thanks for watching, and I hope you learned something. If you did learn something here, do me a favor, punch that like button, hit that subscribe button, and tell a friend. I'd love to get these videos out to as many people as possible. I think I have a positive I think I have a positive take on the world of propping, and I'd love to get that that doctrine out there. So, hey, thanks a lot for watching. See you next time.